like this, and you sometimes see that very clearly in a photograph. Something is ironic in the world, and it has to do with the fact that what you intend never comes out like you intend it. What I'm trying to describe is that it's impossible to get out of your skin into somebody else's, and that's what all this is a little bit about, that somebody else's tragedy is not the same as your own. Another thing is a photograph has to be specific. I remember a long time ago when I first began to photograph, I thought there are an awful lot of people in the world and it's going to be terribly hard to photograph all of them. So if I photograph some kind of generalized human being, everybody will recognize it. It'll be like what they used to call the common man or something like that. It was my teacher, Lisette Model, who finally made it clear to me that the more specific you are, the more general it'll be. You really have to face that thing. And there are certain evasions, certain nicenesses that I think you have to get out of. The process itself has a kind of exactitude, a kind of scrutiny that we're not normally subject to. I mean, that we don't subject each other to. We're nicer to each other than the intervention of the camera is going to make us. It's a little bit cold, a little bit harsh. Now, I don't mean to say that all photographs have to be mean. Sometimes they show something really nicer, in fact, than what you felt, or oddly different. But in a way, this scrutiny has to do with not evading facts, not evading what it really looks like. Freaks was a thing I photographed a lot. It was one of the first things I photographed, and it had a terrific kind of excitement for me. I just used to adore them. I still do adore some of them. I don't quite mean they're my best friends, but they made me feel a mixture of shame and awe. There's a quality of legend about freaks, like a person in a fairy tale who stops you and demands that you answer a riddle. I mean, if you've ever spoken to someone with two heads, you know they know something you don't. Most people go through life dreading they'll have a traumatic experience. Freaks were born with their trauma. They've already passed their test in life. They're aristocrats. I'm very little drawn to photographing people that are known, or even subjects that are known. They fascinate me when I've barely heard of them, and the minute they get public, I become terribly blank about them.
From the beginning, she started to photograph completely differently from other people. But this difference was a difference she wanted. It was a preconceived difference to be, by all means and under all circumstances, original and unique. And then it had to be explained to her that there are great artists in every era who are so new and so different that nobody can understand them. The ears or the eyes are not used to it. And they may be the ones who really contribute to the medium. But at the same time, there are other artists, and they work also in a non-understandable kind of a way. Nobody could understand what they are doing. And they are phonies, and they work with illusions and fantasies. And that this kind of a difference is extremely important to understand. So Diane said to me, you know, she said, I went to the School of Culture, Ethical Culture, where a child, whatever a child did, was considered the work of a genius. So I had never an occasion to find out what's good, what's bad, what's truth, and what's false. And from that moment on, Diane did not bring any more of these pictures. And she started in another way. She had an enormous, different kind of wide subject matter range. And besides the subject matter she had in usual things, she had also her specific subject matter, which of course was the most important, which was to photograph freaks, homosexuals, lesbians, cripples, sick people, dying people, dead people. But she did it very differently from other people. You see, most people look away when they see this subject matter, whereas Diane did not look away, and that takes courage and independence. And I think it is the first time, as far as I know, in history of photography, that somebody would photograph these kind of people who are discriminated, and we are afraid to look at them, because deep down in ourselves we feel we are still crippled somewhere, even if it isn't outside. And she photographed them humanly, seriously, and functioning in their lives. And that was an extraordinary kind of an achievement. She said once to me she wanted to have stillness in her photographs. And she posed everybody, either in the streets or in their homes, and let them look directly at her or into the camera. And by doing so, one would have believed that would freeze the picture, but it was just the opposite. Her influence upon these people and their reaction to her made the picture as spontaneous as if it were not posed. That was a great contribution.
One of the things I felt I suffered from as a kid was I never felt adversity. I was confirmed in a sense of unreality, which I could only feel as unreality. And that sense of being immune was, ludicrous as it seems, a painful one. It was as if I didn't inherit my own kingdom for a long time. The world seemed to me to belong to the world. I could learn things, but they never seemed to be my own experience. I wasn't a child with tremendous yearnings. I didn't worship heroes. I didn't long to play the piano or anything. I did paint, but I hated painting, and I quit right after high school because I was continually told how terrific I was. It was like self-expression time, and I was in a private school, and their tendency was to say, "What would you like to do?" And then you did something, and they said, "How terrific." It made me feel shaky. I remember I hated the smell of the paint and the noise it would make when I put my brush to the paper. Sometimes I would not really look, but just listen to this horrible sort of squish, squish.